Hello, welcome to Friday I'm in Bed.
Podcast for midlife women living their best life, but in bed by 10.
This week on Friday I'm in Bed, we're starting with International Women's Day, the good, the bad and the ugly. Has it lost its meaning, and why does it sometimes feel like brands are using it to sell more products to women who are still earning less than men doing the same job?
Then we're talking about comments from Timothée Chalamet at saying nobody cares about opera and ballet anymore. Yes, fewer people can afford to go, but that doesn't mean the world doesn't care. Should all art have a place? And why do we always end up pitting one form against another?
And finally, the research showing that a third of Gen Z men think women should obey their partners. We're unpacking the stats and asking the uncomfortable question, where did we all go wrong? So grab a cuppa and let's get into it.
Hi, Jem. You're back from your travels. How are you?
I mean, awake is all we can ask for today. So I didn't get back. I got back at about 9:30 last night. It's been a long week, but oh my God, it was fantastic. I'm in love with Morocco. It's absolutely amazing, amazing country. We did have like camel riding and sandboarding and in the Sahara Desert. I went for a run in the Sahara Desert. Just going to say, we went up into the Atlas Mountains. There was waterfalls and it snowed in the mountains. There is snow in Africa.
There is.
So yeah, I had an absolutely fantastic time. But I actually weirdly enjoyed haggling as well. I haggled for a pair of shoes and I was like, no, but it's kind of fun. It feels like it's a game and everyone knows that they're playing the game. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, I actually really enjoyed it and I thought I was going to hate it. So yeah, I've had a fantastic, I'm moving.
It is amazing there. I love it. It's one of my favourite places in the whole world that I've been to this week. And yeah, I mean, I think we're going back in October, but yeah, it's an amazing place. So very jealous.
I am going to talk some more about some of the things that I saw and did later on because some of it's relevant to one of our topics today. So that's good. So what have you been up to while I was away in sunny old England?
Same as ever, really. My son had 2 gigs, so I went to 2 gigs. One was an International Women's Day gig, which I might mention later as well. Yeah, I can't even think what I've done. Nothing.
He's busy with the gigs. He does a lot of gigs. That's good. He's getting booked a lot then.
Yeah, he is. He's doing really, really well, and he's getting lots of amazing feedback every time he plays. People come up to me or come up to him going, "Oh my God, you know, you're so good." And he and this is like actual adults in bands and people, not just like 16-year-olds.
Or teenagers are like, oh, how'd you get to be so cool?
Yeah, I know. There's a bit of that. It was quite funny. He's bleached his hair, which is a masterstroke because obviously you can't really see the drummer, but then you've got this drummer with like white hair and you can really, really see. But somebody came up to me and said it makes her laugh because it's like he bleached it to be more like his mum so that everyone would know he was my son, as if he was really proud of me and he wanted to be like known as my son. And I was like,
that's my
yeah,
mum.
I don't think
No, I like it.
yeah, I know. I liked it, but I was like, let's not tell him because he'll die.
Because he'll be like, no.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got loads to talk about. We probably
as ever
better get on with it.
Well, when I was away, there was a lot that I did not keep up with. I feel like strong Wi-Fi did not seem to be a thing they had a lot of in Morocco.
You were in the desert.
Yeah. Well, to be weird, the Wi-Fi was the problem. My phone signal seemed quite good some places, but I had to be a bit cautious with my data. Anyway, I had better things to do with keeping up on the news, so we're going to chat about it, and I may well just be going up, formulating opinions as we go.
Perfect. Like me most weeks then.
Yeah. How could you tell?
All right. Let's get on with it.
Let's get on with it. Okay.
I think we should start with International Women's Day, which was last Sunday on March the 8th. I've got quite a lot I want to say about it. But before I share my thoughts, the good, the bad and the ugly of International Women's Day, just a reminder, I thought we'd start with what it's about. So the purpose of it is to recognise social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. And it's been going since 1911, and its sort of original purpose was a call for equality, which it still is, obviously. And the UN has sponsored it since 1975. So it is a day to recognise the inequality, should I say, and the achievements of amazing women in history and currently. But this was the first year for me where I felt over it. And I think
Mm,
jaded is probably a good description, because the feeling of businesses hijacking it to sell more products, often to women, feel incredibly disingenuous. And I
mm,
feel, I mean, it's the same with Pride, to be fair, and Black History Month and things. I feel like it's become part of the marketing calendar, and it's starting earlier and earlier. And by the time it gets here, I know I am like, like I can't bear it. And I want to caveat that with, obviously, there's people, women in particular, doing amazing things, and which is what we're going to talk about. So I'm not dissing it as a concept.
mm.
I just feeling like if it's not addressed, it's losing its, what's the word? It's losing
Meaning?
its value.
Yeah,
And if it keeps doing that, in 5 years' time, it will be such an eye roll that it won't have any meaning
yeah.
anymore. So I kind of, I like to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of International Women's Day.
I quite often think, I mean, so we're taking a very obviously like a UK centric view here
Yes.
because that's where we live and we see these things. So in a way, with both Pride and International Women's Day, I guess we should, in a way, it is good that it is being clapped onto as a marketing thing, because it means that the companies want to be associated with it, and therefore it means that arguing for women's equality and LGBTQ plus equality is not a thing they want to distance themselves from, they want to associate themselves with. So I guess there is that as a bit of a
I'm
benefit.
grimacing. Yes, I agree, except all those companies that only talk about it on one day of the year. That's the
Yeah.
problem for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair enough. I mean, there are also some incredibly like hypocritical companies that kind of then just like leap into it, and you go, well, you could release your statistics on equal pay, perhaps, in your
Yeah.
company, and we'll see how that goes. So yeah, there is a lot of jumping on it as a bandwagon, but I guess at least the plus side is that they want to at least pretend that they're maybe the pretending that they like equality for women eventually transitioned into actual equality for women. But that's kind of an aside of just like, yeah, I agree
You're
with you. I
too
mean,
nice,
I am.
because I just see hypocrisy.
Do you know what? I do always try and see, like, I always try and think that people must have good intentions somewhere, because that's just in my brain and I can't help it. So, yeah, no, maybe I am too nice, but that's my at least spin on it. But yeah, no, I absolutely get what you're saying. I'm not averse to a discount, but sometimes there is a little bit of a like trying to sell me things,
Yeah. So let's
especially,
talk about.
when the pay gap is still very real, and it's very real even in some of the companies that are then offering discounts.
Yeah, and I think it's what you offer discounts on and how you offer them. So I was having emails for like weeks before saying, treat yourself, lady, to jewelry, have a discount. And it's like, I haven't like, what would be been better is this International Women's Day, all sales on Sunday, X amount will go to a female led charity. That
Yeah.
to me, cool. Actually, I might buy some jewelry actually, because that's really good. But it's the kind of discount, thing, and treat
Yeah.
yourself. It's like I don't want a candle. I want equality.
And a candle.
Well, I'll have a candle too, please. But you know what I
See,
mean? I think it
there are
depends.
some smaller companies that do that. I think I saw a reel flash through my feed this morning. Like I said, I've only been back since 8:30 last night, so I'm like, I'm no way up to date with things. But Manners, which are a clothing company who I
Yes.
actually absolutely love, were donating a portion of their profits to a women's domestic violence charity, I think it was. So
Absolutely.
particularly smaller brands that are out there. And again, that's the thing, to look for those smaller women-led brands
And I
like
think that
Manners and Murray and things like that I've seen over the last few days.
yeah, and like Holly Tucker, for example, who was the person behind Not on High Street, and she's like she was doing loads of it. She always does all year round. It's worth saying. And to be fair, Manners is really female. Well, it is female led, but also does the right thing all year round. So,
Mm.
but there is obviously supporting female led businesses. But well, actually, this will bring me on to one of my posts that I really liked. So from a marketing perspective, or well, it was
To
not
the good.
marketing, it was on Instagram. So it was a comedy sketch by a man called Rob Mayhew. And I'll put all of these onto the grid across the week. So if you're watching or listening to this now or watching it on YouTube, come over to Instagram and I'll put the actual content on. So he did a skit. Skit, is that the right word? A comedy thing
Yeah.
where he said he's the owner of a company and he wants to do an International Women's Day post on LinkedIn and he wants to look really good. So he asks three women, come from the office, come and help me write this post. And it's really funny. And at the end, they help him write the post. And at the end, he says, "Fabulous, Sophie, will you write that for me?" So it's obviously highlighting the irony or hypocrisy of some male-led businesses. And I really liked that, i.e. you can raise awareness about inequality without being overly political. And I think that's a quite clever way of really highlighting that, don't get the women to do all the work for you.
The unpaid labour aspect.
Exactly. Really funny, really clever.
This is what I've seen an awful lot of things about International Women's Day being the one day of the year when companies seem to think that women will come and speak for them for free. And
Exactly.
like you should be grateful to getting that out there. Hang on. That's not how this works, is it?
No.
And obviously, for any men listening, it's in November.
Well, we'll come on to some of my experiences on the weekend with men around International Women's Day. We'll come on to that.
Well, see, I had a great International Women's Day this year because International Women's Day was while I was in Morocco and we were Boumandades, I think is how you say it. Maybe.
What does that mean?
So it was up in the mountains.
Okay.
We had a local guide that came with us on the whole tour and he was absolutely fantastic and he remembered it was International Women's Day, and for International Women's Day he took us around these places in Boumandales where women were in control. In the mountains it can be slightly more traditional, so if you go to a city like Marrakesh maybe or Agadir, I guess, and those kind of places, they're a bit more kind of modern maybe. But in the mountains and stuff, maybe a little bit more traditional. But there was a cafe. So we went on this walk around up to the Casbah and stuff. And we went to this cafe that was up there that was run by the women from the village. So it was, she was saying they had a meeting of 140 women. And in the end, 40 women were involved. A lot of them were either divorced or widowed, because some of the women that didn't take part, that it was because their husbands wouldn't let them. So that is still a culture in some of the more traditional places, is that they have to do what their husband said. The woman we spoke to while we were there was saying that her husband was a teacher, he was very modern, he's perfectly happy for her to do it. All the money that any of them make when they work in the cafe is their money to do with as they please. We were also told that apparently it's very traditional in the culture that if the women do work, that is their money, and the men still have to pay for all the household stuff and that kind of thing. So it doesn't sound too bad to me, that bit. But but it was absolutely amazing what they were doing there. They'd had like a chef come in and teach them to cook so that they could start offering little bits of food to visitors, to tourists particularly. They serve the mint tea and things, and it was absolutely fantastic. But again, this is a thing where that was giving women the opportunity to learn skills and to work outside of the home, but also to do it on their own terms, so that they could still have their time at home to do the work that they needed to do at home, because that was still the way the household was run. So that was absolutely fantastic, and they were amazing women. We saw them kind of baking bread and on the rocks and stuff, which was incredibly cool. And then we went down to a cooperative where they made carpets. So obviously Morocco is quite famous for carpets and the weaving, and they had a demonstration going for tourists, and then the place was just full of rugs. So the women weave the rugs in their own homes. They're all around the country, not necessarily just local, and then they sell the rugs through this cooperative and they ship all over the world. But again, I think she called it her queendom. So when we went inside, it was pretty much all women, and they were very definitely the bosses. There was one guy there who was behind her, and she was going, just ignore the ugly man. And again, all the money that they make from this business is their money. So those kind of projects are kind of what international, so to go there on International Women's Day was like really special, because that's what it's about. And it makes you realize that women all around the world are having very different experiences for what this kind of thing means to them. It's very easy to say equal, or to argue about the equality even in this country, those little bits of equality, without remembering that elsewhere in the world women have even more struggles that they are still fighting against. So yeah, to go to those cooperatives like that, where the women are actually working for themselves and learning skills, and it was an absolutely amazing experience. The day after, we went to one where they were doing argan oil as well, but that wasn't on International Women's Day. But they were also amazing women.
I think that's, as you said, that's highlighting what it's about. It's recognizing social, economical, cultural, and political achievements, and moves to be more equal, and for, in many countries, women being able to earn their own money, for example. But I still worry that well, here's an example. We went to a concert which was for International Women's Day, and there were 5 acts, all female led. Great night. Hardly anyone came. It was billed as International Women's Day. Hardly anyone came. It was a very, very low attendance. And I think it was low attendance because it was billed as International Women's Day. Most of the people going to music venues, for whatever reason, who knows, that's another debate, are men. Most of the people that go to music venues are middle-aged men, I have to say. 6 music dads, we call them. That's what music venues are full of. Yes, there are women, but ultimately there are more men to women. And they didn't come. So So I feel if it was billed just as 5 great acts, new up and coming, they probably would have done more. And that made me question, like, why? Like, what is it? Do they think it's not for them? Because it's got the word International Women's Day? Is it because they don't want to feel like they're going to be called out? Like, I don't know. And you could argue, well, great, don't come then. But there was nobody there. There was hardly anybody there. Yeah. So it was a shame for these female, bands to not have been
that
seen.
They didn't get the audience, yeah.
And the ticket sales and the money that you get paid is dependent on the ticket sales. So it's kind of like, and there was this punk band, there's like grunge punk led by a woman. They're called At Void. She was French. She's so cool. And she did a speech about women's rights, and she talked about women's rights in Palestine and the Sudan, and she talked about trans rights, and she talked, she went in, and it was very, very powerful. And she talked about how the far right in this country and in Europe, are looking to take away women's rights, and it's important we keep our eyes open, and we, so it was this kind of great speech. But there were still the guys that were there going, and men, what about men? And it was like, oh my God.
No one's trying to take your rights away.
And it's, I think, then linked to the fact that there was nobody there. I feel like, there's just a whole, I don't know if it's because it's over marketed. I mean, you could argue, as who cares? As I said, who cares they're not there? But it's like, I don't know. I worry that I think the right, people on the right who are desperate to get rid of DEI and the Equalities Act, if they see people, what they perceive to be box ticking, it gives them the fuel. This is what I was hearing on Saturday night. Well, you just want to be woke. They just want to be woke. And it's sort of giving them more fuel. And I feel like we need to just really celebrate it in the right way, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
I do know what you mean. It's like the stuff that hits the press on International Women's Day does tend to, it's like it needs to be taken back almost as a day of protest, I guess.
Yes.
A bit like Pride, because Pride was originally a protest.
Exactly. And I think that
it feels like, rather than bringing it back as a day of the celebration of pink and fluffy femininity, maybe we need to take it back as a day that we really do highlight things like those amazing cooperatives that I was just talking about in Morocco, where they're making argan oil, tea, rugs, whatever, that are really kind of pushing the rights of women in that country and getting women involved in things outside of the home. And in this country, use it as an opportunity to, rather than just talk about,
fluffy.
Womanhood, girlhood. I mean, I'm all for that, because I was also traveling with 14 other amazing women while I was away.
Mm.
We were all women, and it was absolutely fantastic. Everyone's got everyone's back. Like, we quite often use the girlhood, which sounds a bit dismissive, but I think it means something very specific to me, and that is great. But yeah, maybe sometimes this is the day, International Women's Day is the day that we actually want to not highlight those positive aspects of womanhood or girlhood, whatever you want to call it, and maybe focus more on the
Protest.
on the process aspect.
And also,
maybe it is that we need to take it back as that day to really highlight the things where we still don't have equality, whether it's in this country or anywhere else.
Absolutely. And I think charity giving is a big part of that, and raising awareness of charity. The gig I'm talking about, they were giving money to charity, but nobody came. So they didn't raise very much money for charity.
Mm.
And I think if we take out it, I was going to say, I call it like the fluffiness, I just want to say, I really want to make a post about how much I love Gemma. She's lovely.
No, do.
Which I could do, but it's like,
Please do.
there are probably bigger things to celebrate, but also to shout about and to raise awareness of. And I think for me, that's the issue. And it's not about selling more candles to ladies.
Yeah. I think ultimately, yeah, I agree with you there. We can celebrate the great things about being a woman any day of the year. Maybe International Women's Day is the day to focus on the things that still aren't so great. So now we are going to talk about Timothée Chalamet putting his foot in it. So this all happened while I was away. So I wasn't like hugely up on the news, but I've seen like a couple of articles and reels and stuff pop up. I was too busy just having a fabulous time wandering around mountains. But I did catch Timothée Chalamet pretty much being cancelled on the basis that he said he didn't want to be involved in ballet or opera. So what seems to have happened is he was recording an interview with Matthew McConaughey, and they were talking about, he was basically saying he didn't want going to the cinema to become something that people didn't do anymore. That he made movies and he wanted to be involved in the industry that people went to the movies to see. And he was concerned that streaming was going to make cinema going essentially a minority activity. And then he used ballet and opera as an example of a minority activity that he did not want to be involved in. So what he actually said was, he didn't want to be involved in something like ballet or opera that no one really cared about anymore. And that was the phrasing, which I believe he then picked up on straight away and went, oh, no, I'm going to be in trouble now. I've just shot myself with 2 ballet and opera taped bullets. So I believe he actually picked up on that in the interview immediately and kind of went, oh, no, they're going to be in trouble now. But yeah, that was the point he was trying to make. He was trying to say that he didn't want going to the cinema to become like ballet and opera. People who like ballet and opera then went, what's wrong with ballet and opera? We like ballet and opera. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one to talk about, because I think there's several things. There's like the rise of streaming, obviously, and whether that is going to kill cinema. Cinema's been through a lot in its history. Obviously, when cinemas first arrived, we didn't have TVs. So then the arrival of TVs in the 90s did mean that cinema became a little bit more of maybe a minority pursuit. And that's when they started doing things like seats that vibrated and pumping smells into the cinema and, kind of 3D films with 3D glasses and all that kind of stuff. And then that all kind of came back again about like 15, 20 years ago, didn't it? Where we had like 3D glasses and IMAX cinemas and, they're innovating. And I have noticed recently a move towards cinemas have fewer seats now.
Yes.
But when they do have seats, they are recliners with take a blanket, get the popcorn, get everything in. They're trying to they almost seem to be fighting to get people off their sofas and like into the cinema by making the cinema more like a sofa. So I can kind of see where he's going with that there's obviously cinema has been through many changes in its history. So that's one angle on it. Is streaming going to eventually kill the activity of going to the cinema? The other angle on it is obviously the ballet and opera angle, which I am quite interested in. I've never been to the ballet. I have been to the opera. I went to, what's the one, the big famous one, Glyndebourne. That's it. That went straight out my head then. So I went to Glyndebourne and I was invited as a press trip. They were doing some of the operas with a kind of 1940s style. So when I was a vintage blogger, I was invited as a press trip to go and talk about it. Absolutely loved it. Fantastic experience. I'd never seen opera before. Absolutely loved the performance on stage, was amazing. And they had subtitles. It was in Italian. They had subtitles that ran along the top, so you could also follow the story, which was
Wow.
amazing rather than just enjoying the music. And to be honest, also really enjoyed the whole thing of Glyndebourne, where you then go outside and have like the fanciest picnic you've ever seen in your life. There were candelabras, champagne, strawberries, absolutely fantastic. The whole thing was an amazing experience. Since then, I've also been to see it. You could see it live streamed. Some of these places then live stream at local cinemas, so ties back into the cinema thing. You can actually go and see opera at your local
Yeah.
local cinema, but it's live streamed from the stage. And I also saw Glyndebourne on tour in Norwich, somewhere where they actually had the actual opera, live opera. So it is good. It is very enjoyable, but it has a reputation, along with ballet, for very much being for rich people. I don't know necessarily whether that's deserved. There are cheap tickets you can get for these things, but it has a reputation of being for rich people, and then that kind of makes it a minority pursuit. So I'm not sure whether it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, is that people just think it isn't for them.
I think it's okay to be a minority art, though, as well. Not everybody has to like ballet, but there are people that love ballet. And I think, I don't know. I mean, I haven't tried to get tickets for the ballet, but I have tried to get tickets for the theatre in London. And they're sold out. So people are buying. Now, a lot of them, I think, are tourists as well. But people do come here, and they do come here to go to the Royal Opera House and to go and see ballet. And I did see somebody respond to Timothée Chalamet,
Shall-
I can't speak, saying, well, people dress up to come and watch us. They don't like they make a night, you said about the nice picnic, or you get, you put your glad rags on and you go because it's an event. So it's different. And I think he probably realized that once he said it. What did
yeah.
spring to my mind when you were speaking was, as somebody that's never watched opera or ballet, did you watch the Brit Awards or were you away?
I was
Don't know. Anyway, Rosalia, who I had never heard of because I'm Gen X. Well, actually, I am quite down with kids, to be fair, when it comes to music, but I haven't heard
No,
Rosalia.
you're not, because you just said down with the kids. That's it.
I know. Down with the kids. My kids performed opera, which turned into a rave, and Bjork came out. I feel like I'm going to put this on Instagram too. It was the most amazing thing, and it turned into an opera rave. So,
Fantastic.
I think there are people out there trying to bring things to the masses,
Yeah.
which is really exciting. I think let's talk about the streaming things. I think what happened was COVID. Obviously, the whole of the film industry, cinema industry kind of collapsed temporarily because we couldn't go to the cinema. And I know lots of big films were like, do we hold back? Do we launch in a year's time? But we need to move on. We need the money back. So they launched new films on Amazon Prime.
Straight to streaming.
And you know what? That was great. Because as bad as this sounds, we could all, my whole family, we have movie night on a Sunday night. We all watched a new movie. And yeah, it costs £15, but it costs
Cheaper
in
than
our
going to
local
the cinema.
40, it's £10 each to go to our cinema. So we all sat here for £15 and we watched new films. Now, obviously, I don't want cinemas to die. And when COVID was over, myself and my son were going to the cinema every week. He goes loads to the cinema, actually. We've got a new cinema near us. It's like it used to be £5. I think it's creeping up because the seat, as you said, they don't have normal seats anymore. You can only have normal seat. There's 5 available. And then there's posh seat, and there's super posh seat, and there's super, super posh seat. So you have to end up spending more. But we were going to see films. So we did go back. But one of the things we do, him and I, is we try and watch all the Oscar films before the Oscar ceremony.
Oh.
We've got a view on it. And I wanted to go and watch Hamnet, but it's only on a Sunday night in my cinema because it's on its way out. It's only on a Sunday night and on a Tuesday morning or something. And it's I don't want to go on a Sunday night because that's movie night for my whole family don't want to go. But it's actually on Amazon Prime. So I'm like,
so you'll get it streaming. You can watch it whenever you like. Yeah,
I can stream it when I want to stream it. And so it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you want cinemas to stay alive. Absolutely. But the cost of it, and you have to pay to park quite often as well. I think they're quite relaxed these days about bringing snacks in. You remember you used to
I hope so. Because last time I went, they nearly bankrupt me buying popcorn.
Oh, well, our cinema, you're allowed. It's in the town centre. So it's kind of you go in with your shopping. So they don't go through your shopping. And obviously they want you to buy popcorn. there, but I can't afford to buy popcorn because it's like
You need a mortgage.
£20, later, we've all got some popcorn. It's like, that's crazy. So I think
See,
it's really important that we go to the cinema. But I
well,
also think modern world is probably a mix of both, surely.
see, this is where I think that actually, I mean, his comment was was to be that like he didn't want cinema going to become a niche activity like the ballet and opera. But I actually think that the cinemas could learn a lot from the ballet and opera, because ballet and opera isn't dead. It's there and it's
Yeah.
thriving and it's an event, and people dress up and they go, and you've only got to look at something like Glyndebourne where people having their epic picnics, and it's part of a whole experience. So I think potentially cinema going and cinemas could learn a lot from the fact that, opera, which started off as, the mass entertainment, is still a thing that is happening. And people have it on their bucket lists to go to opera or the ballet, to go and see it in a big famous opera house. And if cinema going could take that from that, and rather just being like, hi, give us 15 quid, we're going to squish you into the tiniest little seat in the world. You can all sit there with loads of other people. It's really difficult to get up and go to the loo. You're going to be really uncomfortable. And then you can watch a film that you could very easily watch at home with your surround sound on your massive telly, and then pause it when you need to go for a wee. Like, that's not an experience, is it? We're not selling that really as a thing that people want to do. So I do think that the cinemas could take a leaf out of ballet and opera. What's special about going to the cinema that you can't get when you're at home? Bearing in mind improvements in things like surround sound, massive TVs, that kind of thing. What is it that the cinema is offering to people that they can't get at home? If they want it to survive, there's going to have to be something else that they can add. Whether that's some films, it might be worth, there's an educational aspect to them. I've been to film screenings before where they get members of the cast or the director, or even just like a local person who knows about these things, to stand up and talk about the film and talk about what people are going to see and what you're going to learn from this, or creating a whole experience around it.
I think there's you mentioned about things streaming from into cinema, so ballet. I know I've been to see National Theatre, and I went to see David Tennant doing Macbeth, and the cinema was chock-a-block. It was sold out. And it was one of their biggest, and it was in the afternoon, to be fair, as in I don't think they'd taken a prime slot, but it was full in the afternoon. So I think cinemas are beginning to do this more, but having a screen maybe for streaming ballet or opera or the theatre. Or I know one of my favourite bands, Placebo, they created a video of them and their writing their album and touring and stuff. And that went to national theatres. And again, fully booked. So I think there's like other things to bring you in rather than just the latest blockbuster. And there's there are a lot of films out as well. I think there's a lot of choice, and realizing that people can't go and see them all, like can't afford to go and see all the films because of the price. So there is something about price. I feel like they're trying to recoup their money back that they've lost, as you said, by having fewer seats but more expensive seats. And that's, our local cinema, as I said, it used to be £5. And I say used to be, I'm talking like 2 years ago. So I'm not talking about forever ago. And I went to see, what did I go and see the other day? I went to see something on my own. Wuthering Heights. And the £5 seat's gone. The lowest is now £11. Now, okay, I can afford £11 for myself. But when it was £5, me and my son were going every week. We went to see everything. And now it's like, it's a bit more with, as I said, with travel, with parking, it just makes it a bit more considered, especially when you've got a family or, more of you than just you.
See, when you say you don't want cinema to die, and then you're looking at the £5 tickets, so what is it that you feel that you get out of going to the cinema with a £5 cheap seat that you wouldn't get if you could also sit and watch that at home?
I'd go to the cinema for the £5 because it looks better, sounds better, and I get to see it quicker. Particularly
so if the quickness wasn't an issue, it would be the look and sound of it.
Yeah, and I want to see things when they come out. I think there is that. And £15 is still quite a lot to stream. My husband, I said I wanted to stream something the other day. He was like, £15? And I was like, well, it costs a lot more for all of us to go to the cinema. And he's like, well, when I used to go to Blockbusters, it was £1 and whatever.
Oh, my goodness me.
I know. No, he didn't say that. That's slightly addressing my husband, but he was a bit like, "Well, I don't want to watch it. Like, I don't want to watch it." Our daughter picks up her phone 10 minutes in, and she isn't.
Mm.
It's me and my son, so we would actually like prefer to go to the cinema. And I think, but is the answer making it cheaper? I don't know. I think, like
I
for
think there's
me,
like two directions. One of them is to make it cheaper and focus on the fact that of the, the look and the audio and the video being better in the cinema. You can focus on that. Will people care about that, especially if they're people, with a really big TV and surround sound, you know? Or is the answer, so you could make it cheap, pack people in and tell them this is a great place to see it and they're going to have to wait otherwise, or you can make it more expensive and make the whole thing an experience that people want to do, that it's, is there a restaurant in the cinema, is there something, is there an interval, put intervals back, and halfway through the
oh, well,
film
ice
everyone
cream.
bring somebody in with an ice cream, or like you can go out and interact with things, or to make it that more
Well,
of
I
an
don't know.
experience. Is that it seems like there's those two ways to go.
There are.
Which one do we want to go? Do we want cinema to actually be the ballet and opera route, where it still exists and it's still around and it's maybe a little bit more minority, but it really is an experience that you want to go to, like going to the theatre and you get dressed up. Though having said that, last time I went to the theatre, people weren't dressed up.
I don't know. I think when you go, because obviously I am still going to the cinema, there are films that are sold out. Are there too many films? Have we got so much choice now that we've become blind? So Wuthering Heights was full. I went to see Wicked, obviously, when it came, the second one and the first one, full, obviously. Barbie, full. Oppenheimer, full. Those big films are. But if I had gone to see Hamnet, which I want to still see, would it have been full? Probably not. Now, that's not necessarily a problem, but there are a lot of films. I mean, there's a lot of films coming out. And I think one argument is that's great because that's the film industry. And that's really good. We want lots of choice. But because we've got YouTube on our phone and we've got streaming, and we haven't just got Netflix, we've got Prime and Disney and Now and Sky. It's so many, but are we just a little bit blinded by choice? Is that why we don't go? I don't know, because when you go, it is full. There are people there, but I bet there are other films that aren't.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to use Barbie as an example as soon as you brought it up, because this I think this is my angle on it, is that to keep it alive, they need to make these things more of an experience. Because when I went to see Barbie, it was close to the end of the summer. I think I probably could have already streamed it if I wanted to watch it at home. But what I actually did was one of our local cinemas, Cinema City, which is a picture house cinema, did an outside. They did an outside movie, what's it called, cinema thing. They did an outdoor cinema, and we went to see Barbie. They had deck chairs set up, so you could just grab a chair. You didn't have to take your own chair. There was deck chairs. There was one of the big pink Barbie boxes that you could take photos in. They had a bar at the back that you could get up during the film, go and get yourself a drink. They had those little mochi ice creams for some reason that you could get little mochi ice cream. So yeah, it was really great, and it was experienced. It was absolutely packed of people dressed up as Barbie, like doing the whole works. I've also been to several of the secret cinema presentations as well, which is another thing where it's a whole experience. One of the first ones I went to see, Casablanca. Everyone got dressed up. You had a character. They were acting out parts, like scenes from the film. I did the same with 28 Days Later, where I watched 28 Days Later from a hospital bed during a zombie outbreak with zombies running around upstairs.
Yeah, I think we need both. Because
Mm,
if it's to be accessible, most people either don't want to sit outside at a cinema
mhm.
and they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think there's having it accessible to everybody, so everybody isn't reliant on streaming and they get out the house and they put some money into the tills of the cinemas, but then also creating that experience thing, like as we started, with opera and ballet and secret cinema and all that, because I think they're two different people. Although I would probably cross over between both, but generally speaking, it's two different people. Barbie, it's a tricky one because like Barbie's like Wicked, isn't it? Like there was so much marketing that there were posters outside. You could do a selfie wall and you became um a character or Barbie or whatever. So they kind of
Yeah.
that helped. Oppenheimer had none of that, and it was a 3-hour film about the atomic bomb, and it was amazing. they didn't need all that, but it had the hype, but at least I
Yeah.
could go and watch it for an accessible price. So I think, to answer your question about which way, I actually think we need both. I think
Yeah.
we need it to be accessible so that £5 becomes, I'll go and watch that film. It's a fiver.
Mhm.
I mean, that's not, and if I can bring my own snacks, it's a fiver. And
Yeah.
it will be sold out because it's only a fiver. But also people that want that experience and want, date night, or, you only go out every so often. You want it to be
Yeah.
something special. I
Yeah.
never go to the cinema with my husband because if we've got, well, it's different now because our kids are older, but when they were younger, if we're going to go out on a date night, we don't want to sit in silence.
No, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And he
Yeah, yeah,
wants
yeah.
to,
That's like 2 hours you're not getting back. You could do that, yeah.
we could just do that at home, sitting on our phones,
Sit in silence.
So yeah, I don't know if we've answered the question, although I think
No.
it's opera and ballet has absolutely its place. And I think to say that nobody goes just because
No
you
one's
want
interested
to.
is nonsense. But yeah, I very much think that if cinema going doesn't want to become a minority pursuit like the
Mm,
ballet and the opera, then it needs to recognise that it does have that competition with streaming and pull its socks up and like make it more accessible.
absolutely. We're going to end with a survey. Survey that always makes me think of Family Fortunes. We asked 100 people. In fact, we
Survey
asked
said,
20.
"Meh."
We asked 23,000 people, because that's how many people were in the survey, across 29 countries. What are your views on, basically, around equality, marriage, the role of man, role of woman? It was a global survey, and the survey spoke to all different aged men, but the findings were particularly interesting for Gen Z men and boys. I'm going to put that in because Gen Z are 13-year-olds. So it's 1997 to 2012. So this survey does include children, let's just say, let's call them 13-year-olds, a child, because that's what they are. The findings have been published and everybody is obviously aghast because here are the findings. So the survey showed that a third of Gen Z men and boys felt that women should obey them. And what's interesting, only 13% of boomers, so that's earlier than 1965, felt the same. So obviously that's been the real headline because, oh my gosh, are we going backwards? Generally
Mhm.
is the thought. But there's been other things that have come out. So 24% didn't want a woman that was too independent. 33% felt that men should have the final word. 59% felt that equality had gone too far. And 21% felt that a real woman should not initiate sex. Interestingly, versus 7% of boomers. The boomers are absolutely fine for women to initiate sex, funnily enough.
I was just going to say maybe those are the boomers that made it into adulthood.
Who knows? But obviously, they're taking what they can get.
The boomers that told women they had to do as they were told aren't alive anymore.
So, obviously, this has been shared a lot, obviously, in The Guardian and all the press and the stylist, etc., etc. But I really wanted to chat about it because I feel that there is some nuance in this, like there is with everything, funnily enough. And I want to discuss the nuance. So, what I don't almost want to do is go, oh, bloody men, thinking I should obey them. I don't obey anybody, which obviously is the truth. I don't
We can
obey
take
anybody.
that as a given, I think, before we even start.
Yeah. But actually, I think it's really important to talk about nuance. And one of the things that I have read is 2/3 of Gen Z men don't believe that women should obey. Now, I don't have the figures of what they felt 10 years ago, or 20
Mhm.
years ago, or 50 years ago, but I'm sure that 50 years ago, more than 2/3 thought they should obey. I think it's getting better,
Yeah, that's right.
potentially.
If you took the same age group at different points throughout history, that those proportions would be different rather than at the moment you're comparing what a 13-year-old thinks to what a
Well,
75-year-old thinks. And that's a whole different story.
and I think that has really been lost in the conversation because when we talk about Gen Zs in the media, I think it's really muddy about who we're talking about. Because, in my opinion, nearly 30-year-old, 97, do the math, 29-year-old is very different to a 13-year-old. Massively different.
Yeah.
I did a bit of research, so I'm going to read from my book just so I get this
Oh,
right.
okay. Yay.
The man's brain, and I did only look up man's brain, so I don't know if women's brains are the same. So forgive me if women's brains, this isn't about men versus women. This is just about men right now. Their brains are not fully formed until their mid-20s. And the part of the brain that still needs to be fully formed, the last bit that is forming, is the part that supports decision making, impulse control, and assessing long-term consequences. And I think that's really interesting, particularly as a
Mm.
mother of teenagers. It's a fact. They don't look forward. They just read something or they see something on TikTok. And I'd like to think my kids are a little bit better at critical thinking, but still ultimately they see something and they make their decision of what's right and wrong. There, that's like a done. They don't critical think because they're not adults, and they also don't think about what about when I'm 25 and I meet somebody and how will that change? They don't think that long term. And I think 13-year-olds being asked what their opinion on women obeying is a bit ridiculous because they haven't even had a girlfriend.
Well, so this is what I was thinking. I was thinking, how was the question phrased as well? Do you
I,
know what I mean? I
it was
can
about
imagine
marriage.
if you ask a bunch of 13-year-old boys, do you think women should obey? Yeah, of course
Yeah.
they should. Should do what they're told, right? Like, do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I think
If you
regardless
ask them, if you ask them any question like that, if it's phrased in that way, like you're going to get a potentially, a very different answer than if you're asking fully formed grown up adults.
absolutely. And the other thing within this is it's done across 23 countries. So I haven't got a list of all the countries. I did try and find it, but
Same.
it wasn't accessible. UK, US were involved, but so was India and Middle East, Far East countries. So everybody has a very different cultural standpoint here.
It very much
And one of
back
the
to what I was talking about earlier on when we were talking about the women's cooperatives. Very, very similar situation, I guess. Yeah.
It's very different. But one of the things I've been, because I like to read the comments, all the press has been talking about traditional views. And actually, we've used the word traditional. I was looking back at some old podcasts, and I think even looking back at the sound bites from last week's podcast, we kept using the word traditional when we were talking
Mm.
about the guy from Love is Blind.
Yeah.
And in the comments, there are most people saying, can we stop saying traditional? Can we start saying sexist? So I think there's this whole conversation as well as is what if your view is this, is it because of your culture? Is it because of your religion? Is it because of your lived experience? Is it because you're traditional? And what does that mean? Or is it because you've been red pilled and you've watched too much Andrew Tate on TikTok? There's a difference, isn't there? They haven't just asked British men. They've
Yeah.
asked it's been global. So again, does that mean it's skewed?
So it's really interesting. Again, traditional's one of those words that, I've used without thinking about it. Like, I get annoyed with myself when I do that.
Well, I think to me,
But
traditional is
that
1950s,
yeah,
two
we
boys,
have
two children.
mentioned that before. I think we've spoken about what we mean when we say
Mm.
traditional, and that we tend to go back to that thing. But it is interesting that we colour that as traditional. But when you call it traditional rather than calling out for what it is, which is sexist or misogynistic or whatever, then you are almost legitimizing it by saying it's traditional. Like this was the original thoughts and it was fine, rather than calling it out as something that we shouldn't be doing anymore. So that is a very good point, and I will take that on board, and I will
Well, one of the
think about that.
my thoughts was maybe traditional in this context means religious. Let's just say you are a practicing Christian or Muslim, whatever religion that is, and so therefore the way you live your life is quite traditional. You could go to church, you believe, you are religious, but that doesn't mean you have to therefore think that women should obey. So it's kind of like if I was a tradition, what I think of as traditionals, let's just say religious. Let's put that one out there. You're allowed to be super religious and not think that women have to obey and not allowed to have any decisions. So I think there are some people also going, well, actually, I'm quite traditional, but I still call bullshit to these stats. I still don't
Yeah.
think I should be obeying. I don't feel like my wife should obey, even though I have quite traditional values linked to my culture or my religion or my upbringing. I still actually think we're equal in the house and we should be equal in every way. So I think it's almost like, as you said, I feel it's a bit of a scapegoat when really you should be just going, no, if you think women should obey, then that's a
Wrong.
misogynistic view. You are what? Did you say?
Wrong.
Well, yeah.
I think the other thing that I think is important here is again that media, the way the media likes to frame a headline.
Mm.
Because I like the way you brought that up as well, that, oh, a third of Gen Z boys thinks women should obey. And you're like, oh, and then you go, well, two-thirds of Gen Z boys don't think women should obey. Like, let's not forget about these poor guys who might be the future of the world.
Uh,
Like, and we're demonizing a whole generation based on a behavior of less than half of them,
yeah, and
and
what
what
would
they
be
think.
amazing in that headline is then also compared to 10 years ago when it was only half.
Mm,
Like
yeah,
let's see some progression. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of, and we talk about it a lot, there are a lot of men out there that do think women should be obeying and should be Pilates princesses and not have an opinion and not initiate sex. I mean, even that, not initiate sex. What,
yeah.
like,
I mean, that sounds like the kind of thing that a 13-year-old boy says when they've never had it.
I don't know. I feel like they dream of women. But then again,
Yeah.
one of the things I was reading within this was we need to not just blame incel culture, podcasts, TikToks, etc., etc. It's the rise and accessibility of porn, which is accessed by boys as young as 8. Well, we know toddlers have even seen it, but 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, and where women are therefore objectified and don't initiate sex because the kind of porn they're watching is very aggressive and the man is initiating the sex. So therefore, that when they're forming opinions about sex, their opinions have already been formed because of what they've
Mm.
seen. And I think that hasn't been talked about enough within this. And I did see some people beginning to talk about that. And it's like there's lots of different layers to this. But as you said,
Yeah,
two-thirds don't agree.
kind of access that young boys, young men have to things like pornography and the podcasts, and there's so much information that they're exposed to with their tiny little brains.
Well, yeah.
The forming of those ideas, it's very precarious, I think. I think it's a landscape that must be incredibly difficult to navigate, and it must be very difficult to navigate as a parent, I should think.
To my children last night about all the
Of course.
topics today. I do talk to them to get the Gen Z so that I can be down with the kids.
Down with the kids.
And my son said he doesn't know anybody that supports those views. Absolutely. He doesn't know them. And I'm like, well, maybe that's because you hang around with cool people. Maybe, to be fair, they're all creatives and they're all in their music,
Mm.
and they're all into indie punk music, so maybe it's the people you're surrounding by. But he was like, no, I feel like I would have thought, he said, I would have thought that when I was 13, but now I'm 18. It's like, no, no.
Yeah.
Which gave me some hope. And then my daughter just eye rolled because she's of an age where they are all behaving like that at school,
Mm.
which is worrying. And I suppose it is worrying, but I want the data. I want more data. And there probably is data somewhere. There's probably a report somewhere with all the research on for this
Yeah.
survey. But what countries? What was the split between East and West? And what was the split between 29-year-olds and 13-year-olds? And
Yeah.
they've got the stats with boomers. Did they do it with millennials and Gen X? Have we've just been eradicated from the headlines because we don't even exist.
So they were like, oh, that's boring. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, did we? Because actually, I know a load of middle-aged men that have views like the ones that are coming up.
Mm.
So would they not included? Where's the stats
Yeah,
for
that
them?
would be
Or
a
are we
very
not worried
interesting
about
one,
them?
actually. I mean, but again, I feel like, I mean, when I was kind of 14, 15, I spoke to plenty of boys who told me things like women weren't funny, so couldn't do comedy, or women couldn't do heavy metal. And they would state these things like they were facts, like women just couldn't. They didn't have the voices for it, or they just, and because they didn't like it, that was obviously just a fact. That it was not a thing. And you do still hear that coming out. But the people who said those kind of things to me at that
I'm now
age
48.
and now considerably older than that. And I think if you ask them now, they'd be like, oh, of course they can.
Well, you say that. I also worry, we talk a lot, you and I on this podcast, but just in everybody in general, about young boys and the rise of misogyny online. But their early opinions are being formed by their parents. And I think that does not get talked about enough. I know enough misogynistic, sexist 53-year-olds. In fact, I know this is going to sound harsh, the lion's share are. And obviously, I try and surround myself by people that don't feel like that. My husband doesn't, thankfully. But those are the people that are bringing up the Gen Zs and have brought up the Gen Zs. And I feel sometimes we need to be a lot more, I was going to say finger pointing. I don't know if it's necessarily that. Talking about parents and the roles we've had, and the fact that we don't know what Gen X are saying in this research, well, that's telling, isn't it? Because they've all brought up the Gen Zs. Who are thinking this. So it's kind of like mums and dads do play a role in this.
Yes. I think, see, I don't know, maybe I don't talk to enough people, but they're not attitudes I do. I'm always, when I hear anybody in my actual real life reflect views like that, I'm always surprised. It's not something that I come across, basically, in my life, apart from online idiots. So again, maybe it's that I surround myself with nicer people. And like I was saying, even some of the people that might have in the past kind of parroted those kind of views at me, as they've got older, I really think that they don't say those things anymore, that they've learnt, their brains have formed and matured.
I think that's potentially because you don't have children and have to communicate with the parents of those children. Because I think once you have children, you have to talk to other mums and dads. Like you can't get away with not doing it. And you kind of befriend some of them and they're in your world. And now my kids are older, they still are in my world because we have to communicate about like who's picking them up from Reading Festival or whatever. We're still communicating. And so I guess
it takes you out of a bubble.
Yeah, you end up knowing people whose children are the same age as yours. And therefore, that's your connection, not because they're your people. Obviously, you do gravitate towards your people, but there are plenty of people I know whose children are the same age as my children who share very right views, for example. Yeah, they're amongst us, my dear. And they are, because they also, and I'm not saying the dads in the village write things on posts on Facebook, but when you go on Facebook and you read all the, you look at their pictures, that they're like 50-year-old guys. So I think it would be really interesting to know what do they expect their wives to obey, or they're given up.
So I guess to finish up, in your opinion, because you know more about the Gen Zs than I do, because you are down with the kids, unlike me, do you think there's hope for Gen Z boys?
Yes. I actually think, though, I was going to say yes, positive, it's the Gen As you've got to keep your eye on. The Gen As, the next lot, are the ones that we need to change things. We need to change because, like the adolescence program on Netflix, which obviously really got people talking about loneliness in boys and misogyny and online incel culture. It's the 11, 12s and 13s are the ones really, really seeing it. And that's all they're seeing because they're not going out. I feel like I have hope for Gen Z because they're also the people that are really fighting for change. They're fighting for a greener world, the planet. There's so much hope with young people. I actually get really excited when I see them, being political, talking about politics. I think there is real hope. And I think sometimes when I look at Gen Zs, I see what I was like at uni when I was going on protests. And, I feel like there's that. I actually worry about the very young, the bottom of the Gen Z, so the 30, 40, and then the Gen A. That's the bit that we've got to change because they are not going out
necessarily learning that critical thinking early enough.
So I
being exposed potentially to different opinions and attitudes.
I also think, and you've seen a lot of this in the comments, that they're going to have to adapt because we all know that Gen Z women and girls aren't putting up with this shit anymore.
Yeah.
So something's got to give.
That's going to be the answer. Boys can think whatever they want, but if the women don't agree, it's
well, it's back to that passing on your genes and and all that stuff, and people aren't getting married anymore and aren't having children. It's like, well, you're going to have to, something's got to change. Otherwise that will carry on.
And we will, International Women's Day, back to the protests.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, might be time for me to fall asleep after my holiday.
Thank you for joining us for another roundup of midlife chat, hot takes, and occasional moaning. Well, quite a bit of moaning.
Make sure you hit subscribe so your podcast app gently nudges you every Friday, because honestly, who remembers anything without a reminder these days? And also, we like people liking us because we're very needy.
And if you fancy being extra lovely, leave us a rating or a review. It helps more brilliant women like you find us. Have a great weekend, everyone, and make sure you find time for yourself. You deserve it.